Ava never thought her life would be turned upside down on such a quiet day. Everything felt so normal until chaos ripped through her home. Out of nowhere, two armed men stormed in, and within seconds, the one person she trusted most, her father, was shot down. The man who had always promised to keep her safe was bleeding out in front of her eyes, and she couldn't even move. At only 14, all she could do was stand frozen, hearing his last words echo inside her head. "Don't cry." That final message stuck like a scar, and the trauma left behind branded her forever. The only thing she had left to hold on to was the survival training her father had drilled into her. That training became her armor, something she carried with her into adulthood. Years passed, 12 of them, to be exact. Ava was no longer a terrified little girl. She had grown into a woman with her own battles, including overcoming addiction. During that rocky path, she crossed paths with Derek Grant, a man from a wealthy background who carried his own kind of light. He didn't just become her partner. He became her chance to rebuild. Derek's family name carried weight. His father, Robert Grant, was a powerful businessman, respected and feared. Robert, however, never looked at Ava without judgment. He saw her past and disapproved, thinking she wasn't fit for his son. Still, Derek chose her. Marriage followed, and like many couples, they celebrated with a honeymoon. Derek whisked her away to the Caribbean, where his family owned a secluded beach house surrounded by calm waves and memories of his late mother. The couple soaked up every moment of the island paradise, diving into the ocean, racing jet skis like teenagers, lying on the sand while the tropical sun burned into their skin. Everything felt perfect, almost dreamlike, until one night changed everything. While enjoying dinner at a quiet seaside spot, Derek stepped away for a moment, leaving Ava alone at the table. That's when a man named Manny, a local guide, appeared. He had a sly confidence about him and offered something wild, an invitation to Cabaret, home of the notorious El Viudador zipline. The suggestion sounded thrilling, dangerous even, but Ava didn't realize how quickly their lives would spiral out of control. Later that same night, Manny dragged them into a nightclub. It was madness inside. Music blaring, lights flashing, bodies moving everywhere. In the middle of all that chaos, a storm walked in. His name was Big Biz, a gang leader whose presence alone could make people scatter. He made his way straight toward Ava with dark intent written all over his face. Manny tried to shield her, but Big Biz didn't hesitate. He struck Derek down with a single brutal blow. Ava didn't crumble this time. She fought back with everything she had. She moved fast, her fists and kicks landing hard, taking down a few of his men before they realized she wasn't just another tourist. Still, there were too many of them. Derek managed to pull her away, and with Manny's help, they escaped the nightclub in a rush. As the car sped through the night, Ava leaned against Derek, her father's old warning echoing louder than ever. When things go wrong, you're on your own. By the next morning, Manny reappeared, claiming Big Biz wanted revenge. Ava's heart sank until Manny cracked a smile and revealed it was a joke. He hadn't come with bad news. He came to take them on the jungle adventure he had promised. Riding motorcycles deep into the thick greenery, they reached the launch point of the zipline course. Manny went first, soaring across the treetops. Ava froze when it was her turn, staring down at the terrifying drop below. Derek's calm push gave her the courage to leap. Once she launched, fear flipped into pure adrenaline as she flew above the canopy. Derek followed, laughing and recording everything with his camera. Then came the final zipline, El Viudador, the monster ride, the longest stretch in the entire Caribbean. Ava shook her head, refusing to go. The drop was too high, too insane. Derek teased her, tried to push her into it, but she stood firm. Manny went first, gliding across with ease. Derek followed right after, laughing into the camera. And then disaster struck. Mid-flight, Derek's safety line snapped. Suddenly, he was dangling helplessly, swinging high above the jungle floor. His camera slipped from his hands and disappeared into the trees. Panic ripped through everyone. Manny scrambled back along the line to grab him, but their grip failed. In a heart-stopping instant, Derek slipped and fell into the jungle below. Ava sprinted into the trees, screaming his name, her voice cracking with fear. She called his phone, and by some miracle, the ringtone echoed nearby. Following the sound, she stumbled across him in the bushes, battered and bloody, but alive. She screamed for help, but Manny was nowhere in sight. A zipline worker called for an ambulance, and soon sirens were on the way. Ava tried to climb into the vehicle with Derek, but the medics stopped her. Rules, they explained. Their insurance policy didn't allow companions inside. A worker named Jojo translated the details for her and even handed her a card with the hospital's address. When she asked about Manny, Jojo shrugged. He had no clue where the guide had gone. Desperate, Ava grabbed a motorcycle and chased the ambulance through the city streets. She lost it more than once in the chaos of traffic, but she kept pushing forward. Just when she thought she was close, another car slammed into her at an intersection. Thrown to the ground, she was shaken and bruised. The driver, panicked, offered to take her to the hospital, supposedly the same one Derek had been sent to. At the front desk, Ava asked for Derek Grant. She showed his photo, begged for help. The staff checked their records, but shook their heads. No Derek Grant, no American tourist, nothing. Ava pleaded, insisting they search again, even showing the business card from the ambulance crew. Still, the answer was the same. No such patient had been admitted. Terrified, she called Derek's sister Sandy, hoping he had somehow reached her. But Sandy hadn't heard from him either. Out of options, Ava stormed past the hospital staff, checking rooms and hallways herself. Security eventually dragged her out. She didn't stop. She ran from hospital to hospital, showing Derek's picture, asking anyone who would listen if they had seen her husband. No one had answers. Every lead dissolved into confusion or outright lies. And that's when it hit her. This wasn't just an accident anymore. Something darker was happening. Something rooted deep in blood and betrayal. With nowhere else to turn, Ava went to the local police. The language barrier made it harder. A female officer, struggling with English, handed her a form and promised they'd follow up if they found anything. That was it. Alone and broken, Ava remembered the harsh lesson her father drilled into her years ago. When everything falls apart, you're on your own. Things only grew worse when Robert Grant, Derek's father, landed on the island with his wife and daughter Sandy. They met Ava at the police station, all demanding answers. The man in charge, Commander Ramon, delivered nothing but bad news. No hospitals had any record of Derek. Even worse, the ambulance wasn't tied to a hospital at all. It belonged to a private company, impossible to track. The case was sliding further into darkness. The family returned to the zipline site, hoping for some kind of truth. Instead, they ran into another wall. The owner swore the ziplines hadn't even been running on the day Ava claimed Derek fell. He said he had no idea who Manny was. And Jojo, the worker who had given Ava the hospital address and business card, now pretended he didn't know her at all. Ava stared at him, furious, demanding he admit the truth. You were here when my husband fell. But he only shook his head, denying everything. The lies were piling higher, and Ava realized she was standing at the edge of something far more dangerous than she ever imagined. Commander Rayon called them back to the station, but instead of moving the investigation forward, everything flipped on Ava. The police who once seemed to be on her side suddenly turned their questions against her. Their tone changed, their looks carried suspicion, and it became painfully obvious. They were no longer treating her as the desperate wife of a missing man. They were starting to look at her as the suspect. Days passed without a single missing person alert being issued. No sketches printed, no bulletin sent out, no official search underway. It was silence from the authorities, as if Derek had simply never existed. Outside the station, Ava snapped. She wasn't going to let bureaucracy bury this. She shoved Derek's photo and the crude sketch they'd managed to put together into Robert's and Sandy's hands, forcing them to help her hand out copies in the streets. If the police weren't going to help, they would do it themselves. For a brief moment, hope flickered. That night, a television broadcast aired, showing Robert Grant promising a $100,000 reward for anyone who could bring back his son. But behind the cameras and the grand gesture, doubt was quietly spreading in Robert's mind. His attention turned toward Ava. He brought up her past, her struggles, and insinuated that maybe she wasn't the victim here at all. Maybe she was hiding something. Ava's fury boiled over. She lashed back, refusing to be painted as guilty. But the divide had already opened. By morning, Robert, his wife, and Sandy were gone, leaving Ava completely alone on the island. Refusing to give up, Ava went back to the zipline site. Alone this time, she decided she wouldn't take any more lies. She cornered Jojo and forced him onto one of the ziplines. Mid-air, she stopped the ride, leaving him dangling helplessly above the jungle canopy. Fear cracked his mask, and under the pressure, he broke. Shaking, Jojo spilled the truth. Many had told him to stay quiet about Derek. Ava caught every second of his confession on camera. "Look at me," she demanded, her voice razor sharp. "What happened to my husband?" And Jojo said the name she expected. Manny. That was all she needed. She rushed the footage back to Commander Rayon, convinced that now, finally, there would be progress. Instead, everything crashed harder than ever. The police didn't thank her, didn't follow the lead. They arrested her. Ava was dragged away in cuffs, placed on a ferry, and told she was being removed from the island. To the officers, this was case closed. No more Ava meant no more headaches. But they underestimated her. During the trip, she asked to use the restroom. Inside, when one of the officers dropped his guard to grab some tissue, she struck. A swift kick, a violent slam. He went down. She snatched his keys, freed herself from the cuffs, and without hesitation, leapt overboard. The cold water swallowed her, but Ava swam back toward shore with the determination of someone who had nothing left to lose. Soaking wet and shivering, she slipped unnoticed into a hotel room left open by cleaning staff. She changed into dry clothes, threw on a pair of dark sunglasses, and walked out like she belonged there. Her destination was the nightclub where she had first crossed paths with Manny. And there he was, moving through the crowd as if nothing had happened. When he stepped into the restroom, Ava followed, locked the door behind them, and attacked. She didn't waste time. Fists, elbows, rage, she pinned him down and demanded answers. Manny stammered denial after denial, insisting he knew nothing. "I don't know. You don't say. You don't say." He repeated it like a broken record until Ava showed him a photo, an image of a tattoo she remembered from the fake ambulance crew. Manny's eyes widened. He knew that mark. It belonged to a local syndicate that dealt in drugs, crime, and silence. Finally, he cracked. He swore he'd help, but only if she promised to keep him out of the police's reach. He was undocumented, and any official attention could ruin him. Ava followed him back to his small, cramped home. From there, he led her through nearby neighborhoods, searching for the man with the tattoo. As they walked, Ava noticed a flyer on a wall, printed with the same symbol. At the bottom was an address, Edgar Tree. They followed it, the trail leading them to a cockfighting ring, loud and crowded with men yelling over the sound of birds and money-changing hands. Manny slipped inside with his phone, filming the crowd. He sent the footage back to Ava, but none of the faces matched what she was hunting for. Then Ava's eyes caught movement. One of the ambulance staff stepping outside with a woman. Timo. She didn't hesitate. She followed immediately, leaving Manny behind. The pursuit dragged her into a part of the island called Sto. Vero, a place so run down and hostile, even locals avoided it. Ava texted her location to Manny, and he fired back warnings not to go in alone. Too late. She was already inside. Timo realized he was being followed, and the moment he did, he turned violent. The fight that broke out was brutal. Metal pipes, fists slamming into walls, her body absorbing blow after blow. But Ava refused to stop. She pushed harder, beat him down, and dragged him into an abandoned building. Bloodied and gasping, Timo finally gave up a name, Omar. Ava stole his phone and, with quick thinking, texted Omar as if she were Timo. The bait worked. Omar showed up not long after, but instead of words, he came with violence. Another savage fight exploded. Ava's body was pushed to its limit, but she fought like her life depended on it because it did. In the end, she turned his own weapon on him and shot him dead. The noise drew attention. Police stormed the area, and Ava was arrested again. This time, Commander Rayon arrived personally. His accusation hit harder than any punch. Ava herself was the killer. He said she had murdered Derek, murdered everyone tied to the case, and was only covering her tracks to cash in on life insurance and inheritance. She was locked away, cut off from anyone she could trust. But the nightmare wasn't over. Instead of being taken for official questioning, the police vehicle carrying her veered deep into the jungle. The ride grew longer, darker, until the car stopped. 2 officers stepped out and began digging. This wasn't an interrogation. It was an execution. Ava, handcuffed in the back seat, fought against the restraints until they snapped. The moment she broke free, she launched herself at them. It was savage, desperate, and violent, but somehow, even outnumbered, she dropped them both. In her rage, Ava made a mistake. Instead of disappearing, she went straight to Commander Rayon's home. There, she seized his daughter and held her hostage. The confrontation broke him. With his child's life in her hands, he finally spilled everything. Derek's disappearance, the lies, the cover-ups, it had all been orchestrated. Wherein owed a massive debt to a man named Avalar, the wealthy owner of a private clinic called Villa Jaragu. The debt wasn't financial greed, it was personal. His daughter had needed surgery, and Avalar had paid for it. In exchange, Wherein had bent to his will. The truth was worse than Ava imagined. Derek hadn't vanished by accident. A doctor at the clinic had made a mistake during treatment, a mistake so serious it should have ended careers and brought scandal crashing down. To avoid exposure, the clinic erased every trace of Derek's presence. They didn't report him, they didn't treat him honestly, they covered it all up, making him disappear. Hearing this, Ava felt herself break. She was convinced Derek was dead. Her fury peaked, and she gave Wherein a final choice. Either do the unthinkable himself, or she would wipe out his entire family. Shattered and bleeding, Ava staggered back to Manny's home. She told him what she had learned, told him Derek was gone. Manny stared at her, horrified, urging her to get medical help. But Ava wasn't interested in hospitals for healing. She wanted answers. The very next day, she returned to the hospital, not as a victim, but as someone taking control. She stormed the entrance, grabbed the same receptionist who had dismissed her months earlier, and held her hostage until she handed over an access card. Ava pressed forward into the hidden wings of the building. Inside, she ambushed a doctor, suffocating him with a plastic cover until he agreed to talk. On a nearby security screen, she finally saw the truth. Footage of Derek unconscious being wheeled inside by a group of enforcers. The doctor, terrified, scrambled to cover for her, introducing Ava under a fake name, Christy, claiming she was his assistant for an upcoming surgery. It worked. Soon, she was ushered into an operating room with none other than Silvio Lugo, the nightclub owner who had once been linked to Big Biz. Derek was there, frail and unconscious, hooked up to machines. The doctor began extracting bone marrow from Derek's spine, cells meant to be transplanted into Silvio himself. Ava realized Derek had been kept alive, not out of mercy, but because his body was useful. He was the only genetic match for Silvio's illness. Without anyone noticing, Ava slipped a sedative into Silvio's foreline. As the stem cells were transferred, Silvio thought everything was going smoothly. Then weakness spread across his body. Confusion twisted his face as he looked at the fore and realized Ava had tampered with it. Chaos erupted. Ava drew her weapon and shot one of his guards before they could react. With nowhere to run, Silvio admitted the truth. He had blood cancer, multiple myeloma, and Derek's cells were the only thing keeping him alive. Ava shoved Derek into a wheelchair, adrenaline surging, and with bullets flying, she made her escape. Bullets echoed through the hospital corridor as Ava pushed forward, dragging Derek with her. Behind them, Silvio and his crew came storming in. Ava spotted an oxygen tank by the wall and fired without hesitation. The explosion ripped through the hallway like thunder, flames licking the ceiling. The blast threw Silvio to the ground, burning his skin and leaving him screaming in pain. He was alive, but barely. Ava wasn't about to waste the opportunity. She shoved him into the passenger seat of a stolen car, slammed the door, and hit the gas. Derek, now conscious and weak but still fierce, aimed a pistol from the back seat. Silvio spat insults, trying to provoke him, and Derek's response was cold. He put a bullet in the man's knee and kicked him out of the car like trash. His men swarmed in instantly, dragging their wounded boss to safety. The chase wasn't over. Tires screeched, bullets whistled, but Ava clung to the wheel while Manny barked directions over the phone. He had set up an escape plan with the locals. They reached a riverbank where a tiny raft waited, pulled across by kids on the opposite side. The timing couldn't have been tighter. Gunfire rained down as Ava, Derek, and Manny dove into the water. They swam hard, splashing under the hail of bullets until they reached the far shore. Soaked and gasping, they piled into an old truck waiting in the trees and tore off toward Manny's house. Ava was bleeding from her arm, grazed by a bullet, but alive. They thought they were safe. They weren't. Silvio's rage carried him back into the village with his army. House by house, his men searched, tearing through walls and threatening anyone in their way. But Manny's place was already empty. What Silvio didn't know was that Ava and Derek had flipped the script. They were the hunters now. Moving quietly through the shadows, they picked off his crew one at a time until there was no one left but Silvio. Cornered and desperate, he found himself with a knife pressed against his throat, Ava ready to finish it. Then the last twist came. Big Biz, the feared gang leader Ava had once fought, stepped in. Calm, almost casual, he asked her to hand over the blade. She hesitated, but finally let go. And in one swift motion, Biz drove the knife into Silvio himself. His message was clear. Silvio's greed had endangered the island, and his time was up. With the chaos over, Manny secured them a speedboat. As the sun rose, Ava and Derek left the island behind, bound for Puerto Rico. Their honeymoon was over, and survival was the only souvenir.